It's an interesting little sound. This morning, I'm going to talk about what I call mountains and rivers, and this is a kind of a theme. Mountains and rivers is a theme that runs through the works of the 13th century teacher Dogen Zenji, who is the founder of our lineage, the Soto Zen lineage. And he talks about it a little bit differently, but the reason I'm using this theme is because among the various practices we do here, besides sutra chanting and shikantaza, zazen, sitting meditation, facing a wall, which we schedule for about 6.5 hours every weekday. And part of that is on Saturday also. But then there's another, besides the Dharma talks, a couple of those a week, like today and one on Wednesday night. I also do something I call mountains and rivers. And the idea is once or twice, sometimes more, sometimes less, sometimes not at all. I come in the afternoon, apparent identity going by remembering things and by imagining things that are going to happen or freaking out about what's going to happen next week. Have you noticed if you have a job interview, a job interview is not here yet you can't relax, because you're already at the job interview. Time's an illusion. It's something, but it's not what it looks like to the self-centered person who is so in love with himself. There's something in Buddhism called the seventh consciousness, Yogacara Buddhism, a particular way of looking at the teachings. Call this the 8 consciousnesses, the first 5 sense consciousnesses, and the 6, which is the thinking process, the 7th, which is the ego mind, or the self-centered part, the part that's looking for advantage and trying to keep away the bad stuff, get more good stuff. Then there's the 8th, which is the storehouse consciousness, which can be storage in there from many, many lifetimes. And no, I don't believe in reincarnation. Nor do I disbelieve in it. To find that kind of lack of positionality is difficult for a self-centered person, for a person who is always invested in how do I look, how am I doing, am I okay, am I getting better, am I getting worse, do people like me, do people appreciate how smart I am, and all this kind of razzmatazz that's going on with all of us on some level. Have you noticed that? You've got kind of some little commentary in the back. They used to characterize that in cartoons, a little angel on one side and the devil on the other. I thought, philosophy 101. It's like good and evil. We're always thinking in terms of those things. And it's not that that's not there on some level. But it's better, I think, to discover for yourself what that is rather than just believe in some philosophy, including Buddhism. Don't believe in anything. You don't need to believe in anything. If you don't believe in anything and you don't disbelieve in anything, then you're completely open to whatever occurs. You're not coming at things with your preconceptions about it, to which prevent you from seeing what's happening. So, mountains and rivers.
What is this? Thank you.
Achoo. Mountains and rivers is the idea of opening up to questions. And so, so if you have questions about anything I've said already or anything at all concerning meditation and Buddhism, let's just stay away from politics. Look at all these people here, no questions. Yes, Tammy.
Okay, so you just said about you don't believe in reincarnation, you don't disbelieve in it, and you don't have a position. Is that like saying? I mean, is that like saying I just don't know, or is that not like that? Saying that? No, it's not like saying that. Okay.
It's not like it, because I don't know is like I'm gonna know, or I'm gonna find out, or I've got to find out, or I don't know. I don't care about that stuff. It's still some kind of a position about it. So what I'm saying is it's just not doing much with it at all. Realizing that it's a concept that you're working with there. The actuality of it may be there, it may be not. And it may be there for one person and not for another. It may show up for different people in different ways. So that's something I'm going to talk about a little later for the daily Dharma gathering at noon. a half-hour talk there. I'm going to talk about the third of the Four Noble Truths, the Nirodha, or cessation. So it's a cessation is different for each person. Sheldon.
How is only don't know mind different from the position of I don't know?
Only don't know mind. So that's the Sengsan, the Korean monk who's of the last century, passed away now. I don't know how long he's been gone, a few years. But anyway, he was a Korean monk who taught only don't know mind. So what he was doing as a teacher, as if you were there as a student, he was kind of, through that teaching, was giving you permission to actually not know, so you could relax a little bit. And our study groups and this, and it took me decades to see this, to really, really understand this. And that was by doing it over and over and over again with other people, to see that you don't, the kind of information we're looking at on any spiritual path, and in particular this one, non-theistic, where we're not looking for a God. We're also not denying that. That's another non-positional situation. So if God shows up, come on in. We're fine with that. So where was I going with that? Where was I at with that? What was the question again? I didn't finish it. Too much weed.
What's the difference between only don't know mind and the position of I don't know?
So yes, thank you. And so I'm old, so I get spaced out pretty easy. It's not weed. I haven't smoked weed in decades. So the idea there is with only don't know mind is path. So there's ground, path, and fruition. Ground is you're suffering. Anybody in here not suffering, I'd like to see you raise their hands. There you go. So the ground is called threefold logic. Ground, what you're doing right now. Path, what you're going to do about it. And fruition, the outcome. Ground, path, and fruition. Your presumptions about what each one of those are will, if you're not careful, will lead you astray, unless you can see their preconceptions or presumptions. Then you don't have to get rid of them because you know they're not true. It's like having a map that isn't exactly true. You know, a map of an 8-year-old might be a lot of fun to look at, but it's probably not going to work very well. Unless Ruby did it. Ruby's map probably would be okay. So path, the idea is you actually by that teaching, he's helping you take an attitude in your mind that you don't really have to grasp at something with your intellect and know it. You can actually allow the stream to flow. You can allow the clouds to move and take a bigger view by saying only don't know mind. If you don't know, look how vast your mind is. If you do it with a positive, if you say, oh, I don't know, I don't understand that, it closes down onto some kind of ignorance or some kind of not knowing or some kind of trepidation over not knowing. I don't know, so what's going to happen? But only don't know mind is ground is suffering, and the path in the situation of what he's talking about is you don't have to know it in the conventional sense. You can actually relax in things as they are, but you cannot do this without a sitting practice. All of this stuff, this intellectual stuff, you can get, if you're not sitting, it's like a vacuum cleaner. If you're not sitting, this intellectual talk, even the one I'm giving here, will draw your mental activity right up into it, and you'll think that you can think your way into this. You can't think your way to sanity. You just can't do it. It's circular. Anytime you see somebody trying to figure something out, watch their body language. I got to figure this out. They immediately stop. They immediately go down into some kind of a rabbit hole. But to say, only don't know mind, then you look out and see what you don't know. And if there's something there, well, maybe you do know something because you've relaxed that whole area called the intellect and the thinking process, the 6th, 7th, and 8th consciousness, to be technical about it. You've relaxed that somewhat so things can move in there more easily. And so one is less likely to buy into things that are going to hurt you. One is less likely to buy into things that are going to lead you in a circular path. So the only don't know mind in path is like that. It's practice that, but you have to practice. You have to do it a lot. You know, sitting for 30 minutes a day, just generally speaking, probably is not enough. anything over an hour starts to be something pretty good. An hour to an hour and a half, if you can do it. And then do retreat practice. Spend time sharpening this blade of awareness for hours and hours at a time, a whole day or more. Very, very important. Then, so we have ground of suffering, the path of only don't know mind, which is what sitting meditation is. If you've done very much of this, you'll know that what it feels like when you sit down, hold the body very still. It's like, I don't know. Why am I doing this? That's the beginning of I don't know mind, but that's the commentary of ego. As soon as ego or self-centered will start to get disturbed by doing something it doesn't understand. When you walk in here and start doing these sutras, any opinion you have about these sutras is ego. Anything. If you don't understand, this is your opportunity to ask questions. I may not be here much longer. And there aren't many people that know this. And I'm also not bragging. Well, maybe a little bit. I've spent a lot of time doing this. I worked very, very hard at it. That's bragging. But it's the truth. I have. And I understand something about this. It's very hard to convey to people. I can only convey it if I have permission. I've got to have your big blue eyes or brown eyes open up and look at me and say, what is this? And come and say, what is it? What should I do? Ground, path, and fruition. It has to be presented. If you don't present it, you might as well be waiting for a train in the wrong station. Yes, sir.
What transcends self-centeredness while chanting sutras?
Allowing your mind to be overtaken by the form. Save all beings. That's why we have a vow in this path. You have to start putting others before yourself. You don't have to. You can do everything you want. Lifetime after lifetime after lifetime. But if you're in this room, you're ready to hear this, or you wouldn't be here. What you do with it, that's there. Then we're back to whatever you do with it. But you're very, from my point of view, not because this is such a treasure trove, but you're lucky to be here to just hear this, that you don't have to correct anything. You only have to see it. But you won't see it if you keep trying to fix yourself. You'll go in circles. There's nothing to fix. There's no solid being anywhere. See it. Do I look like I doubt myself? And do I look like do I look like I'm opinionated? A little bit. But probably enough to keep me in one piece and so I can sit upright. So I'll get to you, Tammy.
Thanks.
So ground, suffering, discontent, not liking this. Life sucks. You can try drugs. You can try golf. You can try a psychologist. You can try anything. You can try the all the different approaches to Christianity or Islam. I'm not saying they won't work. I'm not here to tell you anything like that. But you're here in this room. So then, what I've been doing for over 40 years is practicing the way of the Buddha with the two teachers, the Tibetan teacher and the Japanese Zen teacher that I had. And I'm here to say to you that if you're suffering, you can sit down and face the wall and you can find this out for yourself. This is not a belief system. Excuse me. If you walk in and do these sutras and anything happens in your mind, much more than just doing a sutra, then it's ego. Very interesting, isn't it? I don't want to do those. Those don't make any sense. Meditation's okay, but the sutras, that's just a bunch of extra. That is the backbone of this practice. That's why there's a strong community here. When I say strong, not a lot of people, but the people that are here are very, very invested in this community, which doesn't mean they believe in it. So ground, path, in other words, sit down and have a willingness to not know, so that what is actually there, the reality of that you are not separate from beginningless time, will start to manifest itself in your heart. Let it happen. It's not going to happen unless you sit down and let it happen. You keep objecting with your stupid opinions. When I say stupid, I mean that with all due respect. I know, not very funny. So, ground, suffering, discontent. Path, not knowing, sitting down and having a willingness to not know, but still look at it. I don't know. I don't believe it. I don't disbelieve it. I'm not going to look away. Don't let anything off the hook. Be thoroughgoing. Look at it closely. Look at it over and over and over. Repeat, repeat, repeat. Without repetition, this will not work. And then you want to hear about fruition. You got ground, path, which is 30 or 40 years worth or less. And then fruition. Fruition is also only don't know mind. And only don't know mind means that you know that you can't know what it is that you thought you were trying to know. You can't know that. You can't know something unless you're separate from it. And even then, it's very complicated, because then it becomes all the causes and conditions that arise as any separate thing. But what you actually find out is there isn't anything to know. Whoopee. I mean, there isn't anything, because you actually discover what? You discover you're not separate from anything. So if you're not separate from anything, then there's really no one over here to know something over there. It's called transcendence. You actually transcend this world while you're in a body. If you want it, it can be done. If you don't want it, then continue to do whatever you're doing. I'm not invalidating anybody's activity. Tammy.
Okay, my question is one I've wondered but didn't want to. Okay, anyway, so what, other than sitting,
Yes.
what can help you to realize and discover and understand that you're not separate?
Yes.
And other than sitting?
Other than sitting?
Yes.
Studying books, studying the literature, talking to a teacher, talking to other people who are practicing. It's called Sangha. And in Buddhism, it's called the three jewels. The Buddha, which is this is just a chunk of wood that's carved. Nothing holy about anything, other than everything is holy, sacred. So there's that. There's coming and chanting, putting yourself in here and chant these sutras. Do these sutras so that you actually begin to understand it for yourself. Look at probably, I don't know what it looks like, but I don't like chanting sutras. It's work. It's irritating. I'd rather be watching Netflix. I mean this. I'm not just saying that. I'd really be watching Netflix, but I know that I need to do this if I want to live a strong, a sincere, upright life where I'm serving or I'm helping others. Then I need to come and do this practice, and that's what I intend to do for as much whatever time I have left. If you're focused on happiness is always about others, never about yourself. Your own happiness is kind of beside the point. Save all beings. It's kind of why should I do that? I'd rather go bowling. Question?
Yes, this is from Maggie out in California.
It's about time, Maggie.
She asks, in the 12 links of existence, what is meant by existence?
The apparent an apparent separation from everything else. The 12 links are, and I don't want to go into that here because then we'd have another class, but starting with avidya, or ignorance, and ending with jara marana, or sickness, aging, and death. So something is born and then it goes down. So it's born and it goes down. Something appears. This is existence. Existence is a being. We're all beings. So Maggie, your life, that's your existence. But who you actually are doesn't pass in or out of existence, doesn't do anything. Your actual identity is expressed through this physical form, but you're not limited to it. It's called realization. You actually realize. This is what the Buddha 2,500 years ago awoke to. I wasn't there and I haven't talked to him, so I don't know for sure. But from what these teachings say and what I've understood through practicing this is he opened his eyes one morning after practicing meditation for a number of years with a sincere attitude, and opened his eyes and saw that he wasn't separate from anything. Everywhere he looked, he couldn't see anything other than himself. I mean, he saw other stuff because there's separations, but it's like the first finger recognizing the thumb, the hand, not separate. you finally realize who you are. You realize exactly what your position is. You no longer make any decisions about anything. I'm not saying at Walgreens you don't wonder which kind of toothpaste to get. I'm not talking about that. That does still happen. Unless you're really little, and then your mom's going to decide. When I say decisionless, I'm saying that it's obvious what you should do. Various things present themselves, and you look at them, and you don't have to think about it. If you're thinking about it, if you're rationalizing or running into a lot of things about that, then we're looking at trying to keep an advantage, trying to protect ourselves. I'm not saying you shouldn't protect yourself, but go overboard with trying to protect ourselves from something bad happening. A lot of times, the difficulty with a fork in the road is you don't have patience. You can't wait until you get to the fork in the road. You try to decide ahead of time before you're actually at the fork. Carol.
Is there individuality in who you really are in no separation?
Yeah, both. You can manifest. Do I look like an individual? I have a pretty strong personality. It's even stronger now than it was 10 years ago, because I don't have any doubts about anything anymore. I'm not saying I don't suffer. That's something we'll talk about in the daily Dharma gathering. I'm not saying there's not suffering. And sometimes the suffering can be more intense, but it's a different kind of dynamic when you're no longer, going down into some kind of a cocoon or some kind of a separation, or living in a broom closet your whole life because you just live out of fear. Go ahead. More.
If who you really are is like the sky, how would you be different?
I'll give you a little simple example. As you're asking the question, I'm both listening to you and not listening to you. It's like what you're saying are like clouds. But this reception is more like the sky. So I have no idea what you're going to say. I have no concern as to whether I can answer that correctly. Or, I have no concern about making a mistake about it. So that would be the interchange. There's some kind of individuality. There's still a guy here who has to eat and sleep and watch his weight, watch his blood sugar, all those kind of things, and listen to what you're saying and respond, listen to what you're saying and respond in some way. But there's not a solid identity. You've heard me talk before. It's discontinuous. Who you are, if you look at who you are, one of the ways you can see that is when you'll be at a position where you're wondering about what to do next, and the discontinuity will show up this way. Well, a part of me wants to go to Europe, and the other part of me wants to just stay here and work on my my birdhouse project. Part of me wants to do this. So we actually acknowledge in a very simply, almost homely kind of a way how we just buy into this separation. We live in this constant situation all the time, but we don't. The identity is always shifting and changing. But we think there's one person who's having different feelings and emotions, when actually the actual identity is changing. There is no solid identity. To see that is liberation, or it's at least the beginning of it. Because then you have to see it here, and then you have to see it's happening. It's the case out there also. You can have this is called 1.5-fold egolessness, or in the Tibetan tradition, sosotarpa. So you first see through that there's no solid being here, but you're still kind of suspicious about everybody else. There's something happening out there, and I got to look out for it. It might make me be a self again. More?
No.
We have a few minutes left before we have to close. Thea.
How do you respond to someone, a young person who looks around and says, it's just suffering, it's all suffering, so what's the point? And it doesn't matter, nothing matters. How do you respond to
I got you. Okay, so a lot would depend on, is this one of your children? Yeah. And which one?
No.
Yeah. So are you sitting with him, facing him in a chair at the kitchen table, or are you in the car driving where you're facing?
Yeah.
Find a time to sit down with him specifically where you have face to face, over a cup of coffee or chocolate milk or whatever. Sit down and talk to him, and just and don't make it look like necessarily interrogation, but sit down and have a talk with him, or ask him some questions, not interrogation, but how this is going, or really open-ended ones where you're not coming back with any parental stuff at all. And actually, the only word I can think of is soften that whole connection, make the transition from being a mom to being a friend. Because you
Even
get,
as a friend, is there anything
Yeah.
you can do other than be
Listen.
with them?
other than listen, there's nothing you can do. But the interesting thing, Thea, is if you listen enough, eventually, who else is he going to turn to? When he does get ready, when there's some kind of openness, when he's matured enough. How old is he now?
19.
Yeah, he's 19. That's young. That's very young. So he's got to go through a Saturn cycle first, 29 and a half years. So just do that. Just sit down and show him that that's changing. He'll be suspicious of it. He'll keep waiting for you to lower the boom with your ideas, your opinions, your whatever you've been doing for the last 19 years with him. So make that transition and get the conversation going so it's smoother, so that because right now he's making statements about it that are expressions of how he feels about it. He probably, a lot of young people of all ages go through a existential kind of angst about life and what it means and everything. And it's just so much easier to be nihilistic. Screw this shit. I'm not going to do this anymore. I'm just going to, I'm going to go find I want to party, man. You got to party. What's life about? Some kind of hedonistic approach. And this is very important. That is not incorrect. Because based on suffering, you need to do something about it. And sometimes
it's hard to argue with.
Don't argue.
Right. Well,
Don't argue.
it's hard to respond even to that because
I'll help you. Listen. If you listen to me. Just listen. That's all you have to do. If you make it a point to just listen to him, do it for, he's 19, do it for the next 3 months. Mark it on, I will only listen. Write it down on a legal pad, sign it, date it.
am I allowed to ask questions?
A little bit. Yeah, say, how is this going? But make them open-ended. So not like, what the hell do you think you're doing? That kind of question. Or how is that going to help you, Noah? Don't do that. So just, open that up so that you can, so that whatever chemistry you have that is helpful and positive, that there's a chance for that to act. Probably he's going to have to find a mentor somewhere in some way. I mean, hopefully that's not like young kids in Detroit find somebody in a gang and then end up in prisons.
Can I try to drag him in here?
No, only bring him here if he wants to come. Don't drag him, please. You have to have respect for him. You have to respect where everybody's at. He's been here before. He knows kind of what's going on. It's hard if you're somebody's mother and you're concerned about that. It's very hard to know how to approach that. But it works the other way. Some young people, and I was very concerned when I got on this path about my mother and my stepdad, who now passed away. They had absolutely no openness to this at all. And, culturally, it was impossible for them. And then our chemistry, our dynamic, there wasn't enough chemistry there for it to change and go the other way around. So, I don't know if my children are watching this. I have several of them, but they just basically tell me stuff. They rarely ask me anything. They basically tell me what they're doing with their life. Not a criticism. They're fine. They're very, very highly independent people. All 5 of them. Yes.
Back to one of the first questions.
Yes.
So how does sitting practice of meditation
Yes.
impact a study of this path?
Chazon, answer that question. Shazan's the Eno or the head monk here, and so I like to put him on the spot as much as possible. I'm doing it now. Answer the question.
It feels like that the sitting practice is the foundation for the concepts. Without it, the concepts are just kind of toys and tricks that we toss around. They sound romantic, but it seems like the sitting practice allows for the fruition or the insight to see what's being pointed at through the concepts, so that begins to integrate as our daily life.
How's that?
I like it.
That works. This is a person who practices a lot. We had a session last 8-day session last December. And people practiced a lot during that. Carol was here, Senju was here, Shoko was here, Chazan was here, and other people would come and go depending on their schedules and so on. So a lot, that's why we do it. We set up something, and it sounds silly if you've never done it. Maybe we set up something where everybody comes in and using the bells, the Hanan bell in the hallway, and the various timing devices we have here, so that you have a really strong container that if there's any desire to train your mind at all, you'll come and use this. Use this container. It's not something you've got to do. Nobody's in here with a whip, or this stick is just for show. I've cleaned all the blood off of it. Thought of bringing in my samurai swords and just mounting them somewhere. I don't know how to use them. So. Very important to practice. So we're right. We got about 1 minute before we close down and wait for the 15 minutes for then the daily Dharma gathering. Did I miss someone here? Michael, was yours or?
You've answered it.
I did. Tammy, did you have anything else?
No, thank you.
Okay. Anybody else? Anybody?
So what exactly does like awareness mean to you or in this practice?
So awareness is like it is like a blue sky. If it's fixated, then it's like it's the space around a cloud, just the space that the cloud takes up. That's called self-centeredness or worrying or fretting or planning. Agenda. You know, I like it. I don't like it. It's good. It's bad. It shouldn't be there. It should be there. Who the hell brought that in here? You know, it's those kind of expressions. Where sky-like awareness is more accommodating and actually is much as vast, but you can't see it in another person. You can only see as far as your own sky will let you. And if someone's mind is like the sky, then they're very clear about anything that's coming in. They can see it because they're no longer doing what? They're no longer at war with anything. They're no longer at war with war. Even their own negativity, their own negative clouds, not a problem. We'll talk about that at noon. Not a problem. Yeah. Very good question. What is it for you? Awareness.
Awareness? I don't know. It's like I don't know. I look at it as kind of like a knowing, I guess, you know, like just, like you talk about ego, just not putting your ego in something and just trying to recognize things for what they are and not what you like believe them to be, I guess.
Sounds good. Sounds good. We close? Okay, so we dedicate to merit. And then 15 minutes we'll do other stuff.